Hi everyone, I'm your online stylist Anna Cakebread. Have you ever felt like you're confused on how to use your round brush properly because it is overwhelming or confusing, or you're just not seeing the success that you'd love to see with when your hairdresser uses it? So let me tell you a little bit about the different types of brushes that are out there so that you can kind of get a great big sense of how they work. I have a handful of brushes in front of me that I'd like to share with you, but I'll also pop up some visuals of other brushes that I don't have available that I don't tend to use because they don't really work for me. So we're going to start with the concept of round brushes. Now round brushes are only ever, 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 ever used only on dry hair. If you are to use these brushes, you'd want to make sure that you're using them on 100% dry so that you can actually pull that 20% of stretching from the hair shaft, because when your hair is wet, it shrinks. I'm going to repeat this about a million times through all of my videos because that's a safety zone. If you are pulling on your hair when your hair is dry, you're not going to be pulling past its fragile state, which means that you can keep doing it as many times as you want to and never have any damage from your round brush. Your round brush will not hurt you. It will actually be your friend because it helps to soften and pull out just a tiny bit more than you can than your flat irons and your curling irons, because those are just presses. Round brushes give you that extra little tug that your hair needs to pull back out. If you use this on wet, warning, over and over and over, what will happen is that your 20% is elongated with your hair damp and wet. That when you pull past your 20%, you are going to snap, 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 dry, dry, dry. Think of it as like a rubber band. You can only pull that thing so much until it goes pop or pop, sag. So the idea is that that hair retains that moisture and sits up when it wants to and smooths out when you want to. It's great. The second thing that you need to know about round brushes, now there are all kinds of ones, right? There's all different sizes. So this one is for body, right? It has vents in it, so that means that this brush will allow some little hairs and some fluff to happen while it's sort of warming around the metal of the brush like a curling iron, except for it doesn't have that clamp to close down that cuticle. It just stretches and smooths and glosses. This one probably will give me a little bit more wave to it. This will create more wave and maybe even a little bit of a curl on the longer hair if I was to pull this and wrap this around. Now, if you get these things like locked at your scalp, try to avoid bringing them all the way to your scalp if you're rounding. If you pull the ends underneath it, do not pull it up at your scalp because it will get locked in there. I've seen people having to get them cut out and 5 hours later having to pick them up. So be careful. And I know some of you guys have had that situation, and I'm really sorry because it's not very fun. These guys, like these two sort of smaller ones, basically are to be there to help you maybe create a flip or to create that bump at the scalp just a little bit more, or to be able to have, but you can use these as just extra little bends and movements to give that body and just a little bit of that shape, which is great. Brushes like this with a longer bristles are surface brushes. They just basically help to fluff, because then all those little hairs that you have in between the long hairs sort of float around and become like a building block to having fullness, which is a great brush for that. When you're using a wooden brush or a plastic brush, remember, they don't heat up like metal do. So it's a cold approach to hot air on top of all that hair, and underneath it really isn't getting that warmth from the metal. That's why metal is great. Now, with the deeper bristles, there are boar bristles and then there are plastic bristles. Just note that boar bristles will absorb the natural oils that are in your hair, which means that if you are not protecting it and balancing from scalp to ends, the boar bristles will absorb all of your conditioners. Everything that's in your hair that's moisturized will fill into this stealer, the robber. And what will happen is you'll end up becoming staticky. So if you guys have ever seen static happen from your round brushes afterwards, and depending on the season, you'll have it more so happen more than not. So if you're trying to avoid static and you have a boar bristle brush of any sort, make sure that you have enough moisture in your hair before you do this so that it can be an exchange, a lovely clean exchange between this brush or this type of brush, which is not a round brush, but it is a animal bristle brush. Anyways, I hope that I have answered your questions on round brushes, and here are the wooden ones. If you have any more questions about round brushes, please let me know. I'd love to answer those questions for you, and I look forward to hearing all about your success. If you have better hair days, please post them on the Pinterest. I'd love to see your before technique and your after technique. It would be helpful to share with the community. I hope this has helped. Take care.